Welcome back, you beautiful souls. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to talk specifically to parents right now. If you have a child who is going away to university and you are struggling to let go, don't worry, you are in very good company, especially today as parenting expert, speaker and author, and our very good friend Nikki Bush joins us in person to talk about the best way to support both your child and yourself going through this process. Nix, we love you. So good to have you in person. Admittedly, these chats do become very self-indulgent, and I know I've still got a way to go, but I'm just thinking how much of my life, my purpose, my reason for getting up in the morning and pushing through this crazy old life of ours is my kids. What happens when that's taken away? And February is supposed to be the month of love and connection, and now we are letting go to our little ones. Why is this such a hectic gateway to go through?
Gosh, Graham, you know, you're in that phase where school provides this exoskeleton, this framework, and it's going to drive your life for the next 12 to 15 years. And it's a structure. And when your kids are no longer in that structure, as a mum particularly, any kind of parent is going to go like popped elastic band syndrome because that drive to meet those deadlines is not there anymore. And mothers in particular, and you talked about Valentine's week or Valentine's month, we love to be needed. And suddenly you're not needed on a regular basis. And that's what empty nest is actually about. And for all those years when you are, being driven by that school schedule, you want more time for yourself. Then when you get time for yourself, you go, now what am I going to do with it?
I keep asking everyone who's got kids that are slightly older than mine, I'm like, when is that time? When does it happen? When are we free again? When are our evenings our own? But we might not necessarily want that. But I think this is wrapped up into the anxiety of hoping that our kids are ready. Yeah. And in that final phase, often there might be a few indicators that they're not, i.e. their matric finals, the lack of responsibility being an 18, 19-year-old. There are so many things that potentially point in the other direction. How do we ensure that they are supported through that phase? Because we don't want it to become about us and our anxiety and about them letting go and that big shift. There is still a connection.
This is a journey to independence, and it's about lovingly letting your children go, bit by bit by bit. And right now, anybody who's got kids going away to university, their minds are full of what if? What if their cell phone gets stolen? What if they don't like their roommate? What if they don't manage their budget? And all those things. But the only way for your kids to actually become independent is to let them try it out for themselves. So you do have to let them go, but you do need to give them some guidance. And there's some real basics that I want to pass on this morning. Because you do need to prepare your kids for what-if scenarios. And I've just mentioned a cell phone being stolen. It is a classic in university towns that cell phones get stolen. There are gangs that deal in this.
Take it as a
Do your kids know if there is a car accident or a cell phone theft or a computer theft, what they have to do? Do they know that they have to go and, to the police station, get a case number so that you can do the insurance claim? So these kinds of things are important. Do they know how to use the medical aid card should they land up in the emergency room? Do they know the basics if they're having to cook, if they're in digs? Things like, and these are the calls you'll get, Mum, how long do I cook spaghetti for?
I'm turning everything on and nothing's working. Dad, I don't know why nothing's working. Is there load shedding? Yes, okay, no.
Exactly. And then there's the call of, you know that spaghetti bolognese you make? What herbs do you put in? and it's actually quite fun listening to this kind of, grasping for things that you've actually shown them, taught them, and they just want that little bit of reassurance that they're on the right track.
I love that. What are those little anchors? I've used that word today already. What are those anchors that your child is going to cling to as they head out into the tumultuous seas out there? We've got you covered. If you're feeling that emptiness syndrome kicking in right now, stick around. We're going to continue in just a moment.
It's my feel-good breakfast show.
Welcome back. This is probably going to be a very important discussion if you're a parent right now and your little ones aren't so little anymore and they're jumping out of the nest. We've got parenting expert, speaker and author, and our good friend Nikki Bush here to chat about the infamous empty nest syndrome, because it really is a real thing, especially for parents whose children have now left for university or moved out of the house after matric. They've gone on their gap year, whatever it is. They're no longer yours to protect and love. There are so many big questions around this time. What are the major things we should be thinking about as parents and not fall victim to worrying about? Because there are a lot of anxieties. So we've had a lot of time to think about and build up. So there's some baggage that we're giving our kids as they leave the house. What should we be focused on?
Graham, I think, letting go to let grow is the mantra.
Oh, I love that.
Very, very important. Your children are now spreading their wings, learning to live without you. You are no longer the center of their world. This is actually very important to understand. However, having said that, the minute the chips are down, they are going to phone
exactly.
you. And that's going to be when they run out of data, they run out of money, they run out of petrol, they land up in hospital.
Run out of excuses.
Okay, they will phone you. But no news is generally good news. And you do need to give them space to test their new reality. And these first sort of 6 weeks of being at Varsity, especially in first year, they're going to be testing their alcohol limits. They're going to be testing their sleep deprivation limits. They're going to be meeting new people. It's a whole new world. Of course, there are a couple of conversations that you need to have. They are around personal safety.
Yeah.
So, spiking of drinks, a very important conversation.
Yeah.
Contraception, very important conversation. And you know what? This is just a fact of life.
Yeah.
This is not like, we're going to whisper in your ear.
Yeah.
You got to tell it straight.
Yeah, this is one of the five.
Yeah. If your cell phone gets stolen, if you have a car accident, this is what you've got to do.
Playbook.
Yeah, it's the playbook. It's the what-if playbook. And if your kids, if you've done the scenario planning, then you've got to let them go.
Okay.
And you've got to trust that you did enough. And, if the proverbial hits the fan, every parent is going to step in. But do the scenario planning, because it passes on the baton of responsibility to your child, that when you are not with them, they are responsible for themselves, for their mind, for their body, and most importantly, for their reputation.
Yeah, I think it's worth knowing this, because you're going to fit into almost your first professional social set, if that makes sense, when you enter into Varsity or that next phase of life. If I think of my social sets now, the guys I'm doing business with, my strategic network, you are entering into that phase of life. All of this says to me that we're too late. If you haven't got it down by now, maybe chances are you're going to be in for a tough lesson or two. How do we foster the right kind of decision-making, the right kind of thought process, the right kind of communication skills? Because I'm also terrified that my kids are going to do something that they feel they can't tell me about. So how do we get that right? How do we bed down that foundation before we send them off? How do we support them in that journey?
I think, as children are growing up, you always tell them that they can come and talk to you about anything. That you will be there whether it's good or bad, and your kids need to know that.
You've got to prove it.
You've got to prove it. And the lead up to letting them go is that they will start partying in the later teenage years. They will start drinking in those years.
Yeah.
But be the parent who's there to pick them up at midnight. Be the parent who gives all the other kids the lifts, because then you actually get to experience their world, but you're also there for them. And it's amazing how kids who don't have that support structure will actually really, really respect you for being that parent.
Yes.
But now, of course, they're going to university. You will be on the end of a phone. And it might be a midnight call. It might be that you are tracking them, and that phone does not leave a field in Stellenbosch for 24 hours, and you're wondering what the hell happened. Meanwhile, the phone died when they were partying, but they're safely asleep in their bed.
Yeah.
And to teach them about traveling together in groups. So partying together, and that somebody has to be that designated driver. Somebody is the one who's watching the spiking of the drinks scenario, who is... It's having one person protecting the group, and you take turns.
You're like meerkats. You know, when a meerkat out, there's always someone with their eye on the sky. Someone is always watching.
And it's actually important because there are lots of potential what-ifs. And I listen to some of these groups of Varsity friends where they quite literally pick up one person who looks after the crowd for the night. They take turns, and it's a good thing.
And don't forget that your kids do have their tribe around them. They've got their friends. There are support structures. This is terrifying me even saying it out my mouth, but it could also be a beautiful opportunity for you and your partner, or for you to just connect with yourself again. So it's not all bad. But if you need more real-time advice, nikkibush.com is where you can find this absolute gem. Nix, I don't know whether I should thank you or scold you for terrifying me, but if you are going through this, we got you. We're in it together.